All right, Shane Beamer goes into the portal and gets another 4-star, bumping this class to a top 15 class. Are they done yet? Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. Hope all of you are having a fantastic start to your week and a fantastic Monday, as I always say, if that's even possible. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We got a good one for you today, and South Carolina lands another player in the portal. Today's episode, before we get to who it's brought to you by, let's say a quick thank you to all of our guys and girls out there that listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks a part of each and every one of your listens every single day. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Now, remember, download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, for $20 off your first purchase. Let's get into it. In their never-ending quest to not let me go to bed early, Shane Beamer, Darren Usher, and the staff have decided we're going to add another player from the portal at 9:45 on a Monday night. I say most of that in jest because I'm very ecstatic and happy and excited that another, not just a good player, another elite player in the portal has been added. This time it is a transfer defensive back from NC State. And I believe, I want to make sure I'm not saying this incorrectly because you guys know how I get, but elite player, top 100 player in the transfer portal, Brandon Cisse, I believe. It's Cisse, player from NC State. It's a kid that played when he was healthy really, really well. And it's a defense that was at NC State that was not great. He was one of the very few shining parts and shining stars of that defense. They ranked 11th or worse, I believe, in almost every single major statistical category in the ACC this year. But Brandon Cisse was very, very good. Still putting together a couple of pieces of information, all that kind of stuff, just from the news we got. Because like I said, it came in very late. I'm recording this, I believe, at 10:30. News came out less than an hour ago. But a kid that played in all 13 games is a true freshman 2023. I'm reading this from my other job over at LouisianaSports.net and the article that we just put up about it. So he had a wrist injury this year that cost him 3 games. He played 9 games other than that. The kid out of Sumter, somewhat local product. Like I said, 3-star recruit out of high school, has 2 years of eligibility remaining, but is a 4-star recruit in the portal. Now, here's what I'm going to go back to again on why this is a great get. And it's similar to the other ones that you have seen over the past couple weeks. Now, what this does, first and foremost, it bolsters your recruiting class into the top 15. We talked about this a while ago. Like, there's a massive difference between if you finish in the top 25 and you're 21st through 25 versus the top 20. There's a massive difference between finishing in the top 15 versus 18, 19, 20. I wouldn't say a massive difference there, but there is a big difference between finishing 22nd, 23rd versus 18 or 15 like you are now. And if you don't believe me, I brought this up like over the in July when we were going over recruiting rankings and how important it was for this year's class to be, like, at the time it was pretty low, and I think 31 or 32 or something like that. And I was saying how the difference in classes from the teams that finished 22nd versus 18, all that kind of stuff. You had an Ole Miss that was finishing 18. You obviously saw how that translated onto the field. So the teams that were finishing around 22nd, Rutgers, Minnesota, teams like that. And those are 6-6, middle of the road teams. It's not where you want to be. And especially with the trajectory where the program is now, where it's going, that is not where you want to live anymore. Now, the other part of that too is, I said this before, living in a top 20 class where you still could be, I think, 18. I think like this is what it was the day they were 18th, but they were still technically like 10th in the SEC. That's a pretty normal thing. Now, here's the deal. As a kid out of high school, this is a 3-star recruit, is the 40th best player in the at his position, and then the sixth best the sixth best player in the state of South Carolina. Getting into the portal, he's now the 69th ranked player and the sixth best defensive back in the portal. Remember, we talked about the difference between getting like needs and positions of need versus wants and things like that. This is not a position you by any means feel, oh boy, like we're going to be thin there. They're not going to be very good. We don't think that the secondary is going to be much next year. You've got guys there. You've got a lot of experienced guys that are just now becoming upperclassmen, but have a lot of experience on the field. But when you get a kid like this and he's available, you don't miss out on that. And I don't think defensive back would have been it would not have been a top 3 position of need, in my opinion. I think if you talk about those we talked about before, offensive line, linebackers, defensive line, hands down. Now, again, when you have somebody that's of this ability and this level, and this is a kid that I can tell you right now, 6 feet, 182, long, rangy type kid, which is in nowadays like mold for an elite defender, long arms, all that kind of stuff. That's him. It's a kid that also was, I know he's at NC State. I told you about the ranking already, but he was also being recruited by a lot of big name programs around the SEC. Alabama team, A&M was a team. Most notably, LSU was a team that was going after him as well. But he decides to come back home, come back to South Carolina, and this is a kid that should be able to contribute immediately. And here's the other thing, too. In Clayton White's defense, you talk about a defense that is like most every defense now is in some sort of base nickel with 5 defensive backs just so you can get faster on the field, especially when you're going up against teams that are running spread or running hurry up, anything like that. If you're facing a Josh Heupel type offense, you're facing Lane Kiffin type offense, things like that, and you're getting spread out and your everything's more up tempo. You want to make sure that your base defense is going to usually have 5 defensive backs, right? The thing with what Clayton White runs at South Carolina, it is much more of a nickel flex where you have a 4-2-5 or a 3-3-5, and a lot of times they're in a 3-3-5. Now, you saw that a little bit different last year because you had 2 elite edge rushers that you had coming off both sides with Stewart and Kennard. Regardless of that, this is a kid that will find a home. In my opinion, veteran standpoint and being able to be a Power 4 kid, like a kid from a Power 4 program that has seen a lot of game action, he will find a place on the field. All right. The other reason I think I'm high on this kid, outside of the fact that he's rated as the 6th best corner in the portal right now and a 4-star, and that's another thing too, guys. It is so much more normal to go from a recruit that's a 4-star, 5-star, and then when they get into the portal, they come down. A lot of these players who are highly ranked recruits out of high school, they tend to drop down at least 1 star when they enter the portal for whatever reason, whether it's playing time, they just haven't panned out the same way. Like you've seen it like with almost everyone, right? I don't think I've seen a 5-star portal player yet. Everyone comes down like a peg. Beck might have been a 5-star. I don't know. But either way, even the higher ranked top 10 guys are all around 4 stars and stuff like that. Getting a guy who was a 3-star at high school that has played his way into being a 4-star and played his way doing that with a lot of injuries just tells you the amount of upside he can have, especially if he's healthy. The injuries are a bit of a concern. He left 3 games early this year because of injuries. He missed 3 games. That kind of stuff I don't love. But here's the thing. Yeah, he missed 3 straight games with injuries and left 3 games early because of injuries. Don't love that, but also football's a violent sport. I'm sure it's just an anomaly for this year because, again, he played in all 13 games his freshman season. The other part is the versatility. And we talk about this with the interior offensive line a lot. We talk about this with the offensive line in general and trying to find guys that can play multiple positions to have more value and value add to your roster. This is a kid. We talk about the nickel formation and the nickel, like the scheme you're going to run for your defensive back and your secondary from Clayton White's 3-3-5 and 4-2-5, the flex nickel. This is a kid. Let me make sure I have this correctly. The numbers are in front of me. This is a kid who had over 400. He has 491 career snaps played. A majority of his snaps his freshman year were played in the slot at nickel. An overwhelming majority of his overall snaps, 361 of them, were played on the outside in like near the boundary and more on an island. But he has the versatility to be able to play inside or outside wherever you need. And having a guy like that with a ton of versatility and a ton of veteran experience is a really big deal, especially. So hopefully you can pick up on the defense. I think it's a great pickup. The other part of it too, now you're talking about being in a situation where you have a third 4-star recruit. Being able to get a kid that is a 4-star recruit, you now had your third 4-star recruit in this class. And I brought this up the other day, and the number still tells the same story. You now have 12 commits in this portal class from the December window, 12. The other day you had 10. When I brought this up last week, I think it was like Friday or something like that. You had 10, and you were still a top 18 class. Now you're a top 15 class with 12 total commits. There is 2 teams that have equal to or less than that ahead of you in the portal rankings. So what that tells me is, again, the value per player that you're getting and that Shane Beamer and his staff have sought, evaluated, and now added to their roster is better than almost everyone else in the portal. Other teams have added a bunch of players, and there's other teams that are ranked higher, but you're a top 15 class with only 12 players. That's really, really good. Now, when you add the high school portion of this and the players you're bringing in, I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm going to speak a little bit out of ignorance here as much as I hate to do it. But remember last year you had all but 3 players came in and were a part of spring walkthrough or spring practice, conditioning, all that kind of stuff in early enrollees. I'm imagining that it's something similar this year, or you're at least trying to get ahead of schedule by bringing those kids in, earlier than most. But the amount of talent you brought in from this year's class, when you had 8, I think it was 8 or so 4-stars or higher, combined with the players you brought in with the portal. Now you're talking about double-digit players that are blue chip type players that are 4-stars or higher. That's a big deal. And it's a big deal because not every single one of those is going to play right away. In the past, this would be a situation where it's like, oh my God, we got to get them on the field right away because we don't have a ton of talent or depth and stuff like that. Like in certain areas, like they got to play right now. You're not seeing that anymore. Like now you're able to see some of these kids that come in and you can start stacking positions, stacking roster talent, start stacking depth, and you're stacking depth at elite level.
Okay. That is all for the first part of the show. Before we get into the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the Carson Beck and Cam Ward blueprint that Carson followed and how it may affect quarterbacks in the future in a positive way, including LaNorris Sellers at South Carolina. Before we do, I want to give a shout out real quick to our friends over at TurboTax. Listen, it's tax season, whether you like it or not. And taxes used to mean a lot of things, a lot of negative things. It used to mean dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying if you're even going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms and your tax documents to TurboTax Expert, who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed with the latest technology and which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. We don't love the phrase data points here in South Carolina, but we do when it's involving TurboTax and getting us as much money back as possible. While they work on your taxes, all you have to do is get a real-time update on their progress and then sit and relax and wait for you to get your money back, guaranteed. That's all while you go about your day. Mind your business. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is taxes. This is Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Disclaimer, keep in mind, only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only on iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, when we come back, we will discuss the Carson Beck situation and how it affects LaNorris Sellers. Locked on Gamecocks continues next. All right, welcome back into Locked on Gamecocks. Before we get into the final part of the show, I do want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Game Time App. Now, listen, we've got some big games ahead for South Carolina. LSU comes to town for a massive, massive showdown in women's basketball. And there's also still the chance, listen, we're only 3.5 hours away from Atlanta. If you want to go experience the college football playoff, and it's an incredible experience, trust me, got to go several times, and it's been a lot of fun doing so. But no experience brings fans together quite like a 12-team college football playoff. I remember the excitement of the past playoff games, but can't wait to make new memories with the updated format. And it's been a lot of fun. With the extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you can get incredible deals on great seats for any type of game, event, or concert, or whatever in between you want. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Listen, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, we are going to get to the last part of the show. Before we do, a little peel behind the curtain here. You guys have known for quite some time when I'm home in Columbia, for whatever reason. Okay, I don't know. So, for whatever reason, the internet is always a challenge here. It's just always a challenge. And I don't know why. We've tried a bazillion things. What we have also tried to do today, I'm recording this from my phone. If you're still watching or listening, it would be awesome. Shoot me a text, not a text, but shoot me a DM or a comment on Twitter or Instagram or something like that. Let me know if the quality is better, because we're trying out a new thing where we have a live producer on the show. That's right. We went out and got a live producer, hired one just for the show. When I say hired, it's my girlfriend, so she's just in the shadows here telling me that I'm too loud and messing with the mic too much. But please let me know if this is working or if it's not working, because I would love the feedback to know if we can continue on doing it this way. Here's the last thing I want to get into. Now, the Brandon Cisse news was awesome. It came late Monday night, like we talked about for majority of the first part of the show. Something happened last week. It happened within a 24-hour span. And it got me thinking about the positive implications it could have for a lot of quarterbacks in college football and potentially LaNorris Sellers. So here's what I had me thinking. Carson Beck followed basically what Cam Ward's blueprint was to a T. And what he did was he declared for the NFL draft and decided he's going to go to the NFL and all that kind of stuff. And then at the last minute, he decided he was going to enter the portal, which doesn't mean he was out of the NFL draft. It just means he's able to keep his options open. If he wants to come back to college, now he has the ability to do so as long as his name is entered in the portal within that 5-day window after Georgia's bowl game. So he does that. Within 24 hours, he pulls his name from the NFL draft and decides he's going to transfer to Miami. Now, Carson Beck's situation is a little bit different from Cam Ward's, because Cam Ward did that same exact thing, went to Miami, and then got into a situation where he was – before he went to Miami, he was like probably a second to fourth round pick, probably in your third or fourth, like mid-round picks, right? Now that's a class last year where we saw like 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 12 picks, and then we didn't see one taken until Spencer Rattler was taken, obviously, to the Saints in the 5th round. This year, it's not the greatest quarterback class, but Beck saw his draft stock kind of plummet. And now he's going to go to Miami. He's going to get paid $4 million to play. It's rumored that he will now have made $10 million total in NIL money during his college career. Here's the thing. Whether you like it, dislike it, I hate Miami for the most part. Whether you like it or dislike it, it's a brilliant move from Carson Beck for a number of reasons. Now, the part that doesn't apply to someone like LaNorris Sellers is Beck leaving the SEC to go to Miami is a great move for him, because as you've seen every time Clemson's played anybody, there's not a soul in the ACC that is worth a blank, just at all, especially defensively. He's going to go from a Georgia team that played 6 ranked opponents in their 13 games that he played in, played 8 top 50 pass defenses, to a Miami team that only played 2 ranked opponents in 13 games and only played 1 defense in the ACC. There's only 1 defense in the entire ACC that had a top 50 pass defense, and it was Florida State at like 41. Almost impossible. So what's most likely going to happen is he's going to go down to Coral Gables. He's going to make a bunch of money. Yes, he's going to get to be with his girlfriend. That's great, but that's a side effect of everything else. It's just a bonus to everything else. He's going to be able to elevate his draft stock, and more than anything, listen, there's only 32 spots in the NFL to start for a quarterback. You can go be a backup for a long time, but leaving college early is not something that every player has to do now thanks to NIL. It's one of the very few benefits that I think we don't talk nearly enough about in the NIL. It's something I thought Jalen Milroe probably could have done. It's something Quinn Ewers might do. Even though he said he's going to the NFL, it would make more sense, in my opinion, if you've got people offering you $3, $4, $5 million to come back and play another year, and you've already seen your draft stock kind of, like the ceiling and the floor for him is like fourth or fifth best quarterback in this draft, and might not be a first round pick. It makes sense to come back, get more stuff on tape, show that you've improved, go somewhere else so it's a better situation for you, whatever. But it's also showing the one benefit of NIL, which is you're being able to put kids in a situation where they don't have to leave early just because of money. How many times have we seen juniors leave the college early for the NFL draft and then go undrafted? Before NIL, it was a record number year over year for like the last 4 to 5 years. Saban will talk about it all the time. I think at one point there was 91, I believe, 91 total players that left early from their junior season and then went undrafted. That's not creating the best value for your future. Now, what is creating the most value for you, when you talk about the sole reason for NIL in the first place, it was not to have all these collectives pool together a bunch of money and then go buy players. That's what it's turned into, for sure. Like, that's what Ole Miss and Ohio State and teams like that in Miami, they've all done. But the original point of it was create value for the student athletes so they can make money off their own name, image, and likeness. And then you see a guy like Carson Beck, who he could easily he could go pro this year. He probably he might be a late first-round pick, maybe second-round pick. Maybe it's worse. I don't know, especially coming off an injury. But he's going to go to Miami. And he could have got this money somewhere else in the SEC, most likely. He's going to make $4 million. And to put that in perspective, you look at a guy like Will Levis, who's been in the league for however long. He's making $2.3 million this year as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Brock Purdy, he's a much later round pick, but Will Levis was a top of the second round pick. He made $2.3 million starting in the NFL. Carson Beck will make more than that. LaNorris Sellers might make more than that this year. So how does this affect somebody like Sellers? I think we all want Sellers to absolutely flourish and thrive next year, because if he does, it most likely means you're going to see something similar to what happened in those last 6 games. LaNorris Sellers from the first part of the season to the second part of the season, we talked about over and over and over again. It was unbelievable the difference the difference in quarterback that he was. Finishes the regular season in the last 6 games with 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, over a 70% completion percentage. It's hard to put that on tape for a full season in the SEC. I hope he does. I hope, more than anything, I hope he goes out, lights the world on fire, leads this team to a college football playoff and potential national championship, and wins the Heisman Trophy. And if he does, then I hope Aaron Nolan does the same thing after that. But if he doesn't, and you look at some of the players that are coming back next year, like Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a quarterback that'll be eligible for the draft. I don't think he's better, but he has what a lot of NFL guys would consider as big of an upside. It's Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee. The dogs are going crazy. From Tennessee, he's going to be draft eligible. Nussmeier, him, Arch Manning. That's 3 from just this conference that you're going to be competing with in next year's draft. So if he gets through the season, and even if he has a good year, but thinks there's still room to improve, and he likes what he has coming back, and likes what's like from South Carolina, like an offensive standpoint, what could be like still a young team, with the thing about all the receivers they brought in this year, right? And wants to come back for another year, wants to play another year with somebody like Dylan Stewart, wants to play another year with his left tackle, Josiah Thompson. If he does that, he is now in a situation where even if he stays at South Carolina, which I fully believe he will, this is a kid that was offered upwards of $2 million at multiple other SEC schools. And I can 1,000% confirm that from other schools. 1,000%. This is a kid that can make enough money to come back another year, develop even more, play more, win more games for your program, all while still being able to develop and create more value for himself, not only for the immediate future, but for his long-term future as well. And that is something that is really, really great about NIL that we're not talking enough about, and it could impact LaNorris Sellers next year. All right, so that is all for today's show. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Make sure for your second listen, you are checking out Locked On SEC, or even Locked On Scattered, Smothered, and Covered with our good friends Chris Gordy and Barrett Sallee, respectively. We will see y'all tomorrow. Y'all have a great rest of your night. Show's over. Allie?